Imagine a plume of invisible fire rising from the Persian Gulf coast. Not a mushroom cloud, not yet. Just a silent, odorless poison spreading across the water at 30 miles an hour, carried on the wind toward cities of millions. That is not a hypothetical. That is what nuclear scientists, the United Nations, and the World Health Organization are now warning could happen any day. Because right now, in April 2026, the world is one precision missile away from a radiological catastrophe that would make Chernobyl look like a fire drill. Iran's Bushehr Nuclear Power Plant has been struck 4 times since the United States, and Israel launched their war on Iran beginning February 28, 2026. Al Jazeera. Each strike has crept closer to the reactor itself. And on April 4, 2026, the world came within meters of a point of no return. The IAEA was informed of the strike, the 4th such incident in recent weeks, by Iranian officials. Iran confirmed that a member of the site's physical protection staff was killed by a projectile fragment, and that a building on site was affected by shock waves and fragments. UN News. No radiation spike. This time. But the margin of error is collapsing, and the world's nuclear watchdog is sounding every alarm it has. To understand how we arrived at this precipice, we have to go back to a fateful night in June 2025, when the Middle East changed forever. On June 22, 2025, the United States Air Force and Navy attacked 3 nuclear facilities in Iran as part of a conflict that would become known as the 12-Day War, under the code name Operation Midnight Hammer. The Fordo uranium enrichment plant, the Natanz nuclear facility, and the Isfahan Nuclear Technology Center were targeted with 14 GBU-57AB bunker buster bombs carried by B-2 Spirit stealth bombers and Tomahawk missiles fired from a submarine. Wikipedia. It was the most significant American military action against Iranian territory in over 3 decades. President Trump declared on live television that Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities had been completely and totally obliterated. The world exhaled, briefly, but the obliteration was incomplete. A confidential International Atomic Energy Agency report confirmed that Iran's last verified stockpile stood at 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity, sufficient for as many as 10 nuclear weapons if further enriched, stored in a tunnel complex at Isfahan that the June 2025 strikes left structurally unaffected. The agency cannot account for its current location or condition. War on the rocks 10 potential weapons, unaccounted for, unmonitored, somewhere beneath the rubble or already moved to a location no satellite has yet found. By February 2026, the war reignited. Conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States flared up anew in February 2026. Particularly after the 2026 Iranian protests signaled widespread frustration with the regime. Encyclopedia Britannica. The strikes resumed, harder, wider, more desperate. And in this new phase, the targeting crossed a threshold that no military strategist had publicly dared to cross before. Repeated strikes on Bushehr, Iran's only operational nuclear power plant, sitting on the coast of the Persian Gulf, a body of water shared by Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE. This is where the documentary must pause, because what happens at Bushehr is not just Iran's problem, it is everyone's problem. Situated on the coast of the Persian Gulf, the plant is not just a strategic asset for Tehran, but a potential radiological vulnerability for the entire region. The proximity of the facility to major Arab capitals means that a nuclear incident would not be contained within Iranian borders, potentially poisoning the vital waters of the Gulf and collapsing regional security. MSECFLOL. The plant runs on Russian-designed VVER-1000 reactor technology and houses thousands of kilograms of live nuclear fuel. Bushehr Unit 1 currently provides about 1,000 megawatts to Iran's national grid. Al Jazeera. Hit the right systems, and the lights go out across Iran. Hit the cooling infrastructure, and you trigger something far worse. If cooling systems are compromised by a strike, the temperature can rise rapidly, leading to fuel rod degradation and potential explosions that would loft radioactive material into the atmosphere. The human cost would begin with the plant's workers and local residents, but would quickly expand. Prevailing wind patterns in the Gulf region often blow from the north and northeast toward the south and southwest. This means that a plume of radioactive smoke would likely drift directly over the Persian Gulf toward the densely populated cities of the Arabian Peninsula. MSECFLOL. And here's the detail that makes Gulf leaders lose sleep. A simulation conducted by Qatari authorities found that contamination following an attack on Bushehr could render seawater unusable for desalination. Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdurrahman Al Thani warned that such contamination would lead to rapid depletion of water supplies, reinforcing concerns that a nuclear incident could quickly escalate into a humanitarian crisis across multiple countries. The business standard. Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE, nations that rely almost entirely on desalinated Gulf water, could face a water crisis within days of a single catastrophic strike. The IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi has been unambiguous. He has not hedged. He has not used diplomatic language. Grossi previously singled out Bushehr as the one Iranian nuclear site where the consequences of an attack could be most serious. He stated, "It is an operating nuclear power plant, and as such, it hosts thousands of kilograms of nuclear material. In case of an attack on the Bushehr Nuclear Power Plant, a direct hit could result in a very high release of radioactivity to the environment." Gazette. The World Health Organization has echoed this warning, describing the potential consequences as catastrophic. So who is responsible for the current strikes, and why is this happening now? 8 months after Operation Midnight Hammer, U.S. and Iranian officials had been holding talks to reach a nuclear deal and avert another war. Iran, which denies seeking a nuclear weapon, said it would agree to minimal uranium enrichment under strict IAEA supervision in exchange for lifting sanctions. But Trump repeatedly stressed that he is seeking zero enrichment. Al Jazeera. The negotiations collapsed, and when Trump's own envoy, Steve Witkoff, told Fox News that Iran was probably a week away from having industrial-grade bomb-making material, the political pressure to act became overwhelming. Both the United States and Israel remained committed to eradicating reconstituted nuclear threats and remaining activities. The IDF stated that following the June 2025 campaign, Iran began relocating nuclear weapons-related infrastructure to Minzadeh, a location where Israel had tracked Iranian nuclear scientists. FDD. This is the intelligence logic driving the current campaign. Iran is hiding what it has left, rebuilding what it can, and the window to stop it permanently is closing. But here is the strategic trap that no one in Washington or Tel Aviv seems to have a clean answer for. Military strikes can destroy facilities but cannot account for the material already produced. 2 military campaigns have made that stockpile harder, not easier to find. War on the rocks. Every bomb that falls on Iranian nuclear soil makes verification less possible, not more. The IAEA has lost what officials call continuity of knowledge, the baseline from which any future inspection begins. Without inspectors on the ground, there is no way to know what Iran has, where it is, or how close it is to weaponization. Strategically, this is the nightmare scenario analysts call strategic ambiguity in reverse. Instead of Iran using ambiguity to deter, Iran's ambiguity is now the justification for perpetual war. Meanwhile, the global power dynamic is fracturing in real time. Russia, which built Bushehr and still has personnel stationed there, is furious. After the 4th strike on Bushehr, Russia evacuated its 198 workers from the plant. The weak Moscow's state-owned nuclear corporation Rosatom has a multi-billion-dollar investment in that facility and a contractual relationship with Tehran that predates this conflict by 2 decades. A direct hit on Bushehr is not just an attack on Iran. It is an attack on Russian strategic infrastructure in the Middle East. The geopolitical blowback would be immediate and severe. China, meanwhile, watches with calculated silence. Beijing has been Iran's largest trading partner and has consistently opposed unilateral Western military action. But China's more immediate concern is what a regional nuclear contamination event would do to its Belt and Road investments across the Gulf, and what it signals about the security of its own strategic partners globally. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has delivered one of the most chilling warnings of this conflict. In a post on X, he said, "Remember the Western outrage about hostilities near Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine? Israel and the U.S. have bombed our Bushehr plant 4 times now. Radioactive fallout will end life in GCC capitals, not Tehran." The weak. This is not rhetoric for domestic consumption. This is a foreign minister, writing in English, directly addressing the governments of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain, warning them that the weapon being aimed at Iran could detonate over their cities. The historical parallel here is unmistakable and deeply uncomfortable. In April 1986, the Chernobyl reactor exploded during a test in Soviet Ukraine. The radioactive cloud crossed borders that did not ask for it. 30 people died immediately. Hundreds of thousands were displaced. The long-term cancer toll is still being calculated, and Chernobyl's reactor was not in the middle of a war. It was not being struck by bunker-buster bombs or precision missiles. It simply malfunctioned. Bushehr is now in an active war zone, absorbing strikes on a near-weekly basis. With its Russian technical staff evacuated and its safety systems operating under battlefield conditions, no nuclear facility was ever designed to withstand. A strike on reactor systems, or spent fuel storage, could release radioactive isotopes such as cesium-137 into the environment. These materials can spread through air and water, contaminating soil, food supplies, and marine ecosystems over long periods. The business standard cesium-137 has a half-life of 30 years. A contamination event in the Persian Gulf would not last a season. It would last a generation. So where does this end? Analysts watching this situation are tracking 3 distinct scenarios. In the first scenario, the current campaign achieves its stated military objectives. Iran's enrichment capacity is permanently eliminated, a new diplomatic agreement is reached under extreme duress, and the strikes on Bushehr remain close calls without triggering a reactor incident. This is the optimistic scenario. It requires surgical precision, intelligence that may no longer exist, and an Iranian political willingness to negotiate from a position of complete defeat. All 3 conditions are uncertain. In the second scenario, strikes continue to escalate, and a catastrophic hit on Bushehr's reactor or cooling systems causes a radiological release into the Persian Gulf. The consequences, contaminated desalination systems, mass evacuation of Gulf coastal cities, and a decades-long environmental disaster, would make this the worst man-made nuclear incident since Chernobyl. Regional governments that have quietly tolerated the campaign would face furious publics and rupture their relationships with Washington permanently. Russia would have a casus belli for a dramatically more aggressive posture in the region. In the third scenario, Iran succeeds in reconstituting a covert enrichment capability at an undeclared site, uses its unaccounted-for stockpile of highly enriched uranium to cross the nuclear threshold, and the entire logic of the military campaign, the thousands of sorties, the diplomatic wreckage, the lives lost, produces the exact outcome it was designed to prevent. The question for Washington now is what happens next, and whether military force in Iran can succeed where diplomacy did not. War on the rocks, the IAEA's 7 pillars for nuclear safety during conflict: physical integrity, functional safety systems, operational staff, secure power, uninterrupted supply chains, radiation monitoring, and reliable communications, are now being tested against the reality of active warfare. Every one of those pillars is under stress at Bushehr. Every one of those pillars is what stands between this conflict and a regional catastrophe that no ceasefire can reverse. One strike. That is the margin. Not a war, not a campaign. A single correctly or incorrectly targeted missile. And the Persian Gulf becomes something no map has ever had to label before. The world has lived through Hiroshima. It has lived through Chernobyl. It has lived through Fukushima. What it has never lived through is a nuclear power plant destroyed in an active war, in a body of water surrounded by 20 million people who drink the sea. We are watching the conditions for exactly that scenario being created in real time. The question is not whether the world is paying attention. The question is whether the world is paying attention fast enough. If this investigation has opened your eyes to something the headlines are not yet telling you clearly enough, subscribe now. Share this with someone who needs to understand what is actually happening in the Persian Gulf. The comment that matters most right now is the one that asks, where does this end? Because the answer, from nuclear scientists, from UN officials, from the IAEA, from Qatari water engineers running contamination simulations, is that nobody knows. And that is the most terrifying fact of all.